In a quiet neighborhood, where the sun rose gently over white picket fences and flower-filled gardens, lived Karen. She was the type of person who cherished her peaceful mornings, sipping coffee on her porch while listening to the birds chirp. Karen had made her home in this friendly community for many years, enjoying the calm and tranquility it offered. However, her bubble of peace began to burst with the arrival of a small group of neighborhood kids, who found joy bouncing on a colorful trampoline in their backyard. These children were full of energy and laughter. Every afternoon after school, they would race to the trampoline, their giggles ringing like music through the air. From flips to jumps, they took turns soaring into the sky, their carefree spirits shining bright. The trampoline became more than just a plaything, it was a source of endless fun and happiness for them. But for Karen, it felt like an unwelcome storm cloud overshadowing her peaceful haven. As she watched them from her porch, her irritation grew. The lively laughter that echoed through the street started to feel less like joy and more like noise. Karen's heart sank as she imagined her peaceful mornings being disrupted by raucous shouts and thuds of little feet. It was not long before she decided she had enough. With determination in her heart, Karen approached the homeowner whose yard hosted the trampoline. She voiced her concerns about the noise and how it affected her home life. Little did she know that this would set off a chain of events that would change the dynamics of their neighborhood forever. As she expressed her worries about peace becoming a distant memory, she could not foresee how things would unfold next. One sunny afternoon, after yet another noisy day filled with laughter and thumping sounds, Karen made up her mind to take action. She could no longer ignore the disruptions in her once peaceful sanctuary. With a knot of anxiety in her stomach, she walked over to the neighboring house where the trampoline resided. The sun cast long shadows on the street, but Karen's mind was focused entirely on how to handle this situation. As she approached the front door, she felt a mix of apprehension and determination. What would she say? Would the homeowner understand her concerns? Taking a deep breath, she knocked on the door, hoping for a quick resolution to her troubles. Moments later, the homeowner answered with a friendly smile, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath Karen's calm facade. "Hi there. How can I help you?" asked the homeowner, their tone cheerful and inviting. Karen hesitated for a moment before responding. "I wanted to talk about the trampoline," she began cautiously, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's great that the kids are having fun, but it's been really loud lately, especially in the mornings when I'm trying to enjoy my coffee." The homeowner nodded, listening carefully as Karen expressed how the noise had begun to impact her daily routine and peace of mind. She urged them to consider relocating it away from her house if possible. As she spoke, Karen tried to remain polite and respectful. After all, they were just kids enjoying their afternoons. However, deep inside, she felt a growing frustration that this joyful activity had taken away something precious from her life, her quiet moments and serene mornings. What happened next would surprise both Karen and the homeowner and set off an unexpected chain reaction in their neighborhood. After their conversation, the homeowner felt a mix of empathy for Karen's concerns and determination to keep the spirit of fun alive for the kids. They appreciated that Karen was expressing her feelings rather than letting frustration simmer. Wanting to be a good neighbor, the homeowner decided that relocating the trampoline might be a fair compromise that honored both parties. The next day, they researched local ordinances related to positioning play equipment on their property. To their relief, the rules allowed for the trampoline to be moved as long as it adhered to noise and setback regulations. With clear guidelines in mind, they carefully planned where to place the trampoline in their side yard, ensuring it met all necessary legal requirements. On moving day, a cheerful group of kids gathered around as the homeowner explained the changes. The children listened eagerly, excited about where they would now bounce and jump. They helped move the trampoline with bright smiles and giggles, fully aware that their fun was still very much intact, even if it meant bouncing closer to Karen's window. As the trampoline was positioned just a few feet from Karen's bedroom window, the homeowner believed they had struck a nice balance, bringing joy to the kids while respecting Karen's request for quieter mornings. They hoped this new location would minimize noise enough for Karen to enjoy her coffee without interruption. With a sense of accomplishment, the homeowner waited for feedback from both sides. They believed they had made the right decision, one that maintained harmony in the neighborhood while still allowing children to play and have fun. The situation seemed resolved, but little did they know how this relocation would stir more than just playful spirits in the days ahead. The trampoline was carefully moved to the side yard, a decision made with thoughtful consideration of both the kids' needs and Karen's concerns. This new location, while still on private property, placed the bright, colorful trampoline just a few feet from Karen's bedroom window. The homeowner ensured that it adhered to all legal regulations regarding noise and setbacks, believing they had found a reasonable compromise. As the trampoline settled into its new spot, it became an eye-catching feature in the side yard. The bright blue and pink colors stood out against the backdrop of the green grass, attracting attention from passers-by. The kids were thrilled with the change, they hopped and bounced eagerly as soon as it was in place. Their joyful laughter filled the air, echoing off the neighboring houses. However, for Karen, the relocation felt like a betrayal of her hopes for peace. Each morning, she could hear the unmistakable sounds of thumping feet and delighted shouts echoing through her window, starting promptly at 7 a.m. It was a sound she could no longer ignore. The cheerful voices of children that once seemed distant were now right outside her home, invading her sacred morning routine. From her window, she watched as the kids joyfully leaped into the air, their carefree spirits shining brightly, completely unaware of her growing frustration. While they reveled in their new playground, Karen's thoughts spiraled into irritation. She couldn't help but feel that this relocation had turned her once tranquil sanctuary into a noisy arena of youthful exuberance. Little did she know that this was just the beginning of a series of events that would unfold in their neighborhood, challenging her sense of peace even further as the days went by. As the first rays of the morning sun peeked through Karen's window, she was abruptly awakened by the unmistakable sounds of laughter and thumping feet. Confused, she rubbed her eyes, momentarily disoriented and hoping the noise would fade. But as she sat up and peered out her window, reality hit her like a cold splash of water. There it was, the bright trampoline, bouncing eagerly under the weight of giggling children, only a few feet away from her personal sanctuary. A wave of anger washed over her. What were they thinking, she thought, feeling the heat rise within her. Her peaceful mornings, once filled with birdsong and tranquility, had morphed into a cacophony of joyful chaos. The kids' jubilant shouts echoed through her home and shattered her calm, and at that moment, she felt a mix of betrayal and frustration simmering inside her. Each morning brought the same relentless routine. The laughter would start at an ear-piercing 7 a.m., transforming her space into a noisy arena rather than a refuge. Attempting to drown out the sound with music or white noise machines only further highlighted the disruption. Coffee turned bitter as she sipped it in frustration, staring out at the scene that tormented her. With each passing day, Karen's irritation deepened. She began to resent the cheerful voices that filled the air outside her window. It felt as if the kids were directly mocking her need for peace. Their joy became a reminder of what she had lost. No longer could she enjoy a quiet read or sip leisurely on her caffeine fix without interruption. Discontent grew into determination as well. Karen knew she had to address this situation again. She couldn't let a bunch of kids dictate how she lived in her own home. Fueled by anger and frustration, she began plotting her next move, unaware that it might stir up more trouble than she anticipated. In the midst of Karen's escalating frustration, it is important to understand the local laws that govern property rights and noise regulations. The homeowner had carefully navigated these ordinances when relocating the trampoline, ensuring their actions were compliant with community standards. Local laws typically dictate how far structures and play equipment must be set back from property lines, a measure meant to maintain a certain level of privacy and noise control for neighbors. In this case, the trampoline was moved to a spot that was well within legal limits, positioned several feet away from the property line and thus satisfying the required setback regulations. This meant that, legally, the homeowner had every right to place the trampoline there. Regarding noise, local ordinances often define acceptable sound levels during specific hours. While children's laughter can be considered a natural part of neighborhood life, regulations may still exist that protect residents from excessive noise during early morning or late night hours. However, since the trampoline's new location complied with these regulations, it fell within what was deemed acceptable by local authorities. The homeowner felt reassured knowing they had adhered to the guidelines. Additionally, private property rights empower homeowners to enjoy their yards as they see fit, provided they are not violating any laws. This means that as long as the trampoline remained on private property and did not exceed noise limits set by the community, the homeowner could allow the kids to play freely without worrying about legal repercussions. As Karen grappled with her growing agitation, she began to realize that challenging the situation would require more than just her personal feelings, it would entail understanding these laws and how they shaped her neighborhood's dynamics. The balance between fun and peace seemed precariously tilted, and Karen knew she had to navigate this complex landscape if she wanted to reclaim her mornings. Every morning at precisely 7 a.m., the neighborhood awakened to the cheerful sounds of children bouncing on the trampoline. Laughter filled the air like music as excited voices rang out, echoing joyfully through the streets. The colorful trampoline had become a beacon of happiness, drawing children from nearby houses like moths to a flame. As the sunshine poured over the rooftops, the kids would gather, their eyes shining with anticipation. They would line up in front of the trampoline, giggling and shouting, ready to take turns leaping into the air. The moment one child jumped, others couldn't contain their excitement and would join in, creating a symphony of squeals and cheers. Each leap felt like flying, and the laughter that followed was infectious. With every bounce, they reached for the sky, and their carefree spirits seemed to lift with them. From flips to high jumps, they tried to outdo one another, each successful leap celebrated by shouts of, "Did you see that?" and "I can go higher." The kids felt invincible as they soared up and down, their bright energy spilling out into the world around them. As Karen peered out her window, she could see the happy faces gleaming in the morning light, the vibrant colors of their clothing matched the trampoline's hues. It struck her that this joyful scene was what childhood was all about, adventurous and full of laughter. But while the sight was sweet, it was also maddening. The thumping noise became increasingly hard to ignore as it disrupted her once tranquil mornings. As the kids continued to bounce happily just outside her window, Karen realized that this joyful scene was now an everyday challenge for her peace of mind. She couldn't help but feel torn between wanting to protect her own quiet and recognizing the simple pleasures of childhood that echoed right outside her door. As the sun continued to rise each morning, Karen's agitation only intensified. The joyous laughter that once brought a smile now felt like an alarm clock set to an unwanted volume. By the third week of this new routine, she had developed a keen sense of dread every time she heard the excited chatter of children gathering outside her window. Each morning at 7 a.m., as if on cue, the trampoline would come alive with joyous commotion, and Karen's sanctuary would shatter once more. She tried to cope by closing her bedroom window, but the sounds crept in through the cracks, relentless as ever. The cheerful shrieks and thumps felt like an invasion of her personal space, they were a constant reminder of the serenity she had lost. As she sipped her coffee, staring out at the kids bouncing happily, frustration bubbled inside her like a pot about to boil over. Karen's feelings began to spiral into resentment towards not just the children but also their parents. Where are those parents when their kids are making all this noise, she thought bitterly. She imagined them enjoying their own quiet moments, oblivious to how their children's exuberance invaded her home every day. It felt unfair that they could bask in peacefulness while she was left grappling with mounting irritation. Determined to reclaim her mornings but unsure how to approach the situation again, Karen's heart raced with mixed emotions. She knew that confronting the homeowners again might only worsen tensions instead of resolving them. Yet, with each passing day filled with laughter that echoed louder than ever, Karen's resolve hardened. She could no longer sit idly by while her tranquil life slipped further away. As she plotted her next steps, frustration morphed into a simmering anger that clouded her judgment. The cheerful sounds of childhood began to feel less like joy and more like a personal affront, an unwelcome reminder of her desire for peace that now seemed perpetually out of reach. As the noise from the trampoline continued to echo through the neighborhood, reactions from other residents began to emerge, revealing a mix of opinions that added layers to the unfolding situation. Some neighbors expressed support for Karen, sympathizing with her plight and acknowledging how disruptive the trampoline's location could be. They would nod knowingly when discussing quiet mornings over back fences, sharing stories about how their own peace had been altered by the boisterous play next door. On the other hand, there were several families who relished the children's joyful antics. For them, the laughter and excitement brought life to the once quiet street. Neighbors with young kids would often gather outside their homes, encouraging their little ones to join in on the fun. They saw this as an opportunity for community bonding and cherished moments filled with carefree happiness. The presence of the trampoline became a focal point for togetherness among families who valued playtime over silence. As debate sparked among residents, whispers could be heard at local gatherings about how to navigate this new dynamic. Some suggested approaching Karen to understand her concerns better, while others believed she simply needed to adjust her perspective, a sentiment they echoed in casual conversations at the park. One particularly vocal neighbor argued passionately during a community meeting that childhood should be celebrated with exuberance and laughter. "It's just kids being kids," they would insist, reminding everyone that their homes also hosted delightful chaos at times. Meanwhile, Karen felt increasingly isolated in her frustration against this wave of joyful acceptance that compelled her to reconsider her approach. With tensions mounting and sides seemingly drawn, Karen realized that addressing her grievances would require more than just her personal feelings, it would involve navigating this intricate landscape of community emotions. It seemed that reclaiming her morning tranquility was going to be a more complex challenge than she initially anticipated. As the weeks passed, the situation surrounding the trampoline began to reshape relationships within the neighborhood. Karen found herself in a position she never anticipated, one where her quest for peace was pitted against the joy of childhood play. While she had initially believed that addressing her concerns would lead to a straightforward resolution, she now understood that it was far more complex. The kids continued to bounce happily each morning, their laughter a stark contrast to Karen's growing frustration. Some neighbors rallied around her, sharing sentiments about the need for quiet in their homes, while others staunchly defended the children's right to play and enjoy their neighborhood. This division created an unexpected rift among residents who had previously enjoyed friendly interactions, fostering an atmosphere of tension and discomfort. Karen began to observe how these dynamics affected everyone involved. Families who supported the trampoline saw it as a source of community spirit, a way for their children to connect and bond with one another. They cherished the liveliness and laughter that filled the street, believing it brought life and vibrancy to their once quiet neighborhood. On the other hand, Karen felt increasingly isolated in her desire for solitude, realizing that her personal comfort was often at odds with the collective joy of those around her. Through this experience, Karen came to a profound realization: finding balance between individual needs and community happiness is essential for harmonious living. While she longed for her tranquil mornings, she also recognized that the laughter of children was a precious part of life that should be celebrated. As she reflected on her journey, Karen contemplated reaching out to her neighbors, not just those who sympathized with her plight but also those who embraced the playful chaos. Perhaps there was a way to bridge the gap between her need for peace and the community's desire for joy. Ultimately, navigating this new landscape would require patience, understanding, and a willingness to adapt. In doing so, Karen hoped to mend not only her mornings but also the connections within her neighborhood.